Chapter. Hello, welcome back to our weekly Advent sessions. We're ready to talk about week 2, which is all about peace. I'm really excited for this week. So if you're following along with our Advent booklet, it's called A Christmas to Remember, and it's the beautiful green section here. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into our topic of peace today and add some fun metaphysics from the Fillmores. So myself, Julia Baginski, and I am the ministerial intern at Unity of Fort Pierce, along with Reverend Janice Cary, our head minister at Unity of Fort Pierce. We're so excited that you're joining us on this journey.
Great. Yes, week 2. Last week we talked about, hope to faith and how we get deeper. And this week, the peace that passes all understanding.
Yeah, I feel like this is the most important in a way, because like, what else do people want really but peace?
And isn't it interesting? That's what everybody say. Everyone that I know says they want peace. Yet, Julia, what stops us from abandoning that desire? What do you think?
Well, here's what jumped out at me when people get to the reading for Tuesday. The first sentence was like, whoa. And she just starts, peace is a choice.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
isn't that great?
Just to know that peace is a choice. So I think that, when we allow things to have us abandon our peace, to like stray from center, knowing that peace is a choice brings us to the awareness, right? It helps us to have that awareness that when those things happen where we give up our peace, we are at choice to come back to center. And isn't that like the best thing that you can have an awareness around? Because things are always going to happen. I feel like things are always going to happen to challenge us, to move us from our peace.
In the world, there's always going to be trials and tribulations. And this is a choice, exactly what you said, because in our mind, we have a thinking mind, right? And our mind is continuously going. And sometimes what I experience is I start believing the chatter that my mind has. And if I start believing the chatter that my mind continuously turns out, which, we don't necessarily want to stop our mind from thinking, but we don't necessarily want to believe everything it's continuously focused on. So isn't it nice to get that space so we can begin to observe, this is great thinking or original thinking? I call it that, original thinking, which helps us through situations, or is it the repeat of the monkey mind? Are we stuck in a cycle?
That there's that freedom in the original thinking, that really, like, where there's that expansive spaciousness. And this reminds me of one of the other stories from the booklet where, if you're not in your, how did you put it beautifully? Your original thinking, right?
Original thinking.
Which, yes, right, where you experience that freedom. It's almost like you're in that conformed thinking where you think things have to be a certain way. And then if they are, then I'll get my peace.
Right.
If this goes this way, then I'll have peace. And that, she had this story, I think it was like the Monday, it's one of the earlier ones about, she even like wanted to do all the things and have everything be a certain way for her Christmas Eve, and just not feeling like she had committed to doing these things, but she wasn't feeling up to it or to do it. And just, where you can always feel in your body, right? Where like,
yes,
there's like that signal. And she said that she had sacrificed peace on the altar of perfection. And I think that's what that means. When you have it that unoriginal thinking, when you have already something in your mind that it has to look a certain way or be a certain way, and then everything that moves you towards that idea actually takes you from your center of peace.
Right. And I think and exactly what she's saying here in I think this is the December 5th one.
Yes, yes, yes.
Now I do my best.
Mhm.
We're in original thinking when now I do my best. I'm doing the best I can at this moment, and I don't have to worry about how it should look differently. Now I do my best, and I don't worry about it being perfect or getting it all done. I'm no longer running that race, she says, and I'm at peace. And therein lies we want our mind to think, but we want original thoughts. We don't want the monkey mind to run away with us.
Yeah.
I think and so I feel one of the questions that we can ask is not, and I think they say this in here also, not how do I find more peace? How can I cultivate the peace that's already within me?
The remembering and getting back to the awareness of peace, because peace is always there. Like that's really that's our
Ground of
natural
being.
state, right? Like
Right.
it's almost like saying like that's our state of harmony, our natural state where we want to, that's where we come from, right? If we're
Right.
really identifying with source and ourself as a child of God and an expression of Christ, like that we are coming from peace. So that never leaves us. It's not something that we can get because it's always here.
Right. In fact, this one it's talking about it on Wednesday, December 8th. The peace of God is always within us, and we call it forth by spending time in nature, by practicing loving kindness. I love that one. Practice the loving kindness. And of course, we have to practice being kind and gentle with ourselves first and compassionate. And then we can give that compassion and that kindness to others.
Doesn't
And
it kind of remind you like of the Mary and Martha story?
Yes, yes, yes.
It just had that image of the Mary and Martha when I was reading all of the peace stories for the week. And I was like, yeah, it's a different
Right.
come from. It's because when we have peace, it's not that we're like sitting sequestered meditating. It's that we're bringing peace into everything that we do. And outwardly, it may look like we're doing the same things. We're setting up the tree. We're going to, the school play or whatever, the pageant. We're still doing the same things, but it's a different come from that allows us to have a peaceful experience in that moment instead of the hectic rush of I have to get things done.
We're present with what we're doing. We're present with it. Yes. In fact, one of the things that, and I'm sorry, but I just found this from a past Advent book called The Love and Light of Christmas from 2017. And of course, this one that I'm just going to read is from Myrtle Fillmore.
Yay. Okay.
And so I just had to share this one. And she says, the secret place of spirit is the silence. It's a kind of stillness, a place of retreat into which we can enter. And having entered, know the truth. We go into the silence by observing the instructions, be still and know. The only way really to know is to be still, to get away from the outer and from looking for things into the inner quiet where we are alone with wisdom. And in silence, wisdom is given for our every need. So she's not saying to not do, like we just said, and Mary and Martha. What she's saying is do that which is ours from a centeredness of peace. Knowing that it's ours. And we can feel the peace as we're decorating the Christmas tree and cooking and this and that, right? I mean, it's just
yeah. And it's like,
peace.
it's that to me, like being it's experiencing life from the place of peace is so much about like being in the flow and being in harmony and like remembering that, wow, the things that I'm doing because I want to do it, and
Always that. Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a different energy than, oh, I gotta, stress out about something. Like we're at the end of the day, like I want to have this experience. I want to create this. I want to be doing this. And
Right.
it's a privilege, and I'm doing it with love and gratitude. And
Right.
so I'm creating peace around the situation or the circumstance or the person or the event or anything.
Isn't that great? We're creating a container within us. And we know that we can be in peace, even though whatever is happening around us, we can continuously say, I'm going to choose that. So, but we have to monitor the inner stillness. Are we still coming from stillness, or have we got caught up in a story from our head?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I'm reminded of when I was in ministerial school and I was going to go before a committee on like an LNO type of thing. It wasn't, it was a presentation, but it was similar to other ministers. And I was going through my notes. I was sitting outside. It was a beautiful day. I was sitting outside, just kind of going through some stuff again, regarding metaphysics. And one of my mentors, Reverend Carol Nash, walked past me and she said, Janice, you do yourself a favor by putting the notebook down and just be in silence before you go in. Come from that, touch the peace before, rather than trying to cram something else into my brain.
Yeah.
So I always remember that. Yeah.
You told me that before my first LNO, and I remembered. So I just started, I just prayed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it worked.
Exactly. Well, like to cultivate peace, we don't want the misperception that it means you have to sit and meditate for 20 minutes. It means to take a breath and to come from a sense of wholeness. Because in that sense of wholeness, there's a sense of peace. Mm-hmm. The ground of being is a sense of peace. And so, what scriptures for me, in the nativity story that I feel that I really focus on. Last week it was Mary and the angel Gabriel. And if we remember, Mary was awake at that moment when the angel Gabriel spoke to her. So the intuition's always there in us if we're peaceful enough, right? So the part of Joseph, and this is found in Matthew, his encounter with the angel, what happened was, we find at first Joseph, it reads that he was a righteous man and he had an intention, he had planned to, dismiss Mary quietly, privately, and rather than expose her to public disgrace. So he made up his mind. He was not going to go forward with he was betrothed. He was not going to go forward with it, right? This is what the story is saying in Matthew. And then after he had resolved to do this, he'd made up his mind, he went to sleep when he encountered this angel in a dream. Mm-hmm. So it says. And so in the dream, this angel says to him, Joseph, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child is from the Holy Spirit. And then when he woke up, he was willing to follow that guidance. So this is a beautiful way of saying we can change our minds. Mm. We change our minds, but if we have a very, very busy mind, busy, which the men in the Bible, represent our intellectual nature, our rational thinking. We have to first calm and quiet that so that we can hear the voice of wisdom rise up. Yeah. And I love that story. So I focus on, don't be afraid to of your feelings, to take Mary as your wife, because this idea, this child, is of God. So it's the thinking and the feeling nature in alignment, working together to bring a divine idea into the world. And we do so from a sense of peace. Faith, hope, peace, faith, peace.
Very connected. Peace
Isn't it?
flows from faith, yes. And so
Yeah.
that's perfect that it's the next week. And I think, what you said is so helpful, especially I think as we're kind of going through this week, and there are, practices, like practices that are suggested, let's say throughout the week. But it's never, it doesn't have to be complicated, right?
No.
Like you said, just take the breath, right? And just
Right.
allowing yourself to intentionally breathe in that moment breaks up what you're saying, the monkey mind. And it allows us to be, okay, I'm at choice now, because
Right.
and it's just the breath. And if we can just remember to do something so simple, that that can change your life. Like that can transform your whole world.
Right. Because you now live intentionally.
Yeah.
You're living from your intention, your
From your
vision.
intention and from your heart, and you have the courage to, you know be in your original idea. I think, like, for
Uh-huh.
me, that solidifies what you were talking about originally with the Joseph's dream story, because now he has the courage to do what's in his heart, to live in his original idea, instead of being afraid of, like, in that situation, it was like society's expectations or his
Right.
family's expectations or whatever was put on him, the busyness of the world and the rules and whatever it was. So
Right. And
yeah.
like, if we take that story really into us, the nativity story, as I was saying, the feeling nature, our heart nature, our feeling nature, we call it intuition. And so we're guided, we listen, we feel the peace. And then our head can talk us out of it.
Yes.
So it's so aware of, nevertheless, I'm willing. What I like to say is, nevertheless, I'm willing to move forward with what this heart centered piece is inviting me. And I understand this monkey mind is just moving through. That is passing. And it's an indication that we're up to something big. Because when we get out of our comfort zone, we
Yeah, the
can
monkey
rest.
mind gets extra,
It's
riled
really
up,
up.
like, wait, something's about to happen.
Yes. And because, it doesn't want to change. And our monkey mind truly really is trying to just take care of us. And yet the monkey mind really hasn't gone beyond the age of 7. Not to hurt 7-year-olds, but it hasn't developed past that. So there's a part of us that's much wiser. So these practices, whether we, lecto divinia, which is to look at scripture, that we're doing with these stories, or to contemplate some of these, obviously these scriptures that are on every page of the week, or there's journaling, just write
Right.
something out. I
Yeah,
love to.
meditation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's taking the time to connect with your higher self, with your pure being. And then we begin to live in the world from a place of our wholeness, and we really appreciate the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like one of the quotes in here, because that takes me back to Tuesday, where I kind of started with peace is a choice.
Yes.
And at the end of that section, she says, with the passage of time, I have come to know that peace is a choice. It is up to me to decide moment by moment whether I reject it or I claim it and accept it. And I had written down a question there, which is like rhetorical, but what are we really claiming? Right? When we're at choice, like, what are we really claiming? And it's exactly what you just said, in terms of, like, we're allowing ourselves, we're coming back to source, we're aligning ourselves with spirit. That's what we're claiming. It's our true nature.
Yeah, and I just want to give a little bit of compassion to all of us
Mm-hmm.
because we are surrounded by a world that, sees things in a whole spectrum of ways. And if we can just step back for a moment, just for a moment, out of the right and wrong, out of the good and bad, out of the opinions about this should happen or that should happen, maybe we could begin to see that everyone is living according to their what they think is their highest consciousness, where they are. And we can create the container of love for people to change, just if that is in fact what is required, for people to have a larger perspective, you know to see that we are all created in the image and likeness of God, and that this Christos, this light that we're celebrating and preparing for the Advent, the birth of the Christ, in us, this is how we prepare within us a stable consciousness to let that love, to let that light, to let that peace lead us, to let love lead us. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's a great note to come to a conclusion on this, because it gives us so much to think about. And I think that's perfect just to take that wisdom into this week. And
I love it.
I hope everyone has a very peaceful second week of Advent.
And to practice peace. Make it a
Practice.
practice to be peaceful this week. Yes, love it. Thank you. Thanks so much, Julia. I really love what we're doing. I really, really appreciate it.
I do too.